So let me start quickly. How many professional speakers in the audience? Can you put your hands up, please? Okay, terrific. And how many leaders in this room? Yeah, gradually get all hands up. Yeah. I think the truth is that it doesn't matter what you do. There's a leader inside each of us. It doesn't matter whether you lead a company or a country or a team or a division. The fact is that we all lead a life. And the quality of that life squarely depends on the leader. And I've been fascinated by this whole idea of what is it about some people that they get this leadership bit right. And really what I try and do is to say, hey, is there something that we can do to try and unleash the leader inside each of us? And as it happens, I'm not sure if it was part of the plan, but I end up telling a lot of stories. Stories that perhaps work or perhaps help to get people to start thinking. And what I want to do today is really to try and say, how does this entire area of leadership and professional speaking and stories, how do these three come together to make some magic happen? But what's life without a bit of fun? So let's start with a quick quiz. Okay? So what I'm going to do is to try and show you a few pictures of famous leadership gurus. Okay? And I want to see if you can recognize who it is. So let's start with the first one. Okay. I got who said it last. Who said it first? Okay, she said it first. So here you go. Congratulations. I hope you enjoyed reading it. Okay, that is indeed Simon Sinek, a leadership guru like no other. I think if you've just heard him speak, if you've read what he writes, he can really tell a story about what's actually happening in the world around him. And here's someone else then. Who's this? Okay. Yeah, I got the last person. Who was the first person somewhere out there? Okay, here you go. That's for saying Ramcharan. Will you catch this one? Here we go. All right, that's Ramcharan, okay? Professor at Harvard, one of the first Indians who actually went there, taught there, and now is a guru who tries and advises the rest of the world on what does it take to become a better leader. And let's take a third one now. Who's that? Aha. Sorry? Sorry? Thank you very much. Not Tim, but well done. That is, in fact, Tom Peters. Okay, that is, in fact, Tom Peters. So that's three gone. And here's the fourth one coming up. Who's that? Good try. Okay. You can see there's no book left over here. Also a good try. But you can see there's no book left over here. So it's not like I'm expecting you to answer this one. This is a man called Karuna. Okay? He's about 56 years old, nice bespectacled man, wise old chap, worked for about 25 years with one of India's largest corporate houses. But he's also done something else. He was my driver. Okay? And I think he's a leadership guru like no other. And because no one's going to invite Karunan to give a keynote or to be the speaker at a convocation, I thought, hey, I've heard lessons from him and I've learned so much from this man that I thought I'll try and share some of those lessons very quickly with you. And that's really what I want to first do here. 5 lessons that I've learned from Karunan. Here's the first one. And Karunan was telling me his life story. And he says, getting a driving license does not make you a driver. Okay? And he talked about how young people think that once you've got an MBA, I've become a manager. Or once you get promoted to be a team leader, I've become a great leader now. And I think that's not true. That's not true. He says getting a license only allows you to learn to become a good driver. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us over here to say, hey, getting a license does not make you a driver. Lesson number 2, he says the real world is very different from a classroom. He says, I learned how to drive a car, and my first job required me to drive a tempo. He says, everything from the way the steering was to where the gear is, everything was different. I just couldn't get it started. Okay? And I think that's a terrific lesson for us. What you learn in one place, what you might have done in some place, is very different from what the real world might have to offer. So be prepared for the difference. Be prepared that the new world that you will enter is going to be very, very different. Lesson number 3 is to watch out for your slides. It's also to say slog, get your hands dirty. Okay, slog. Karunan says that, when he started to work, the first thing that he did was to spend nights understanding what's under the bonnet. How does that machine work? What's the fuel pump all about? What actually happens when you don't put the oil in over there? He said, that's helped me to become a better driver. And that's terrific advice. If you see great leaders, they're not just people who sit in conference rooms and try and talk about strategy. They actually go out to the factory. They go out to the shop floor. They go to the marketplace to understand what's happening to our business, what's happening to our products, what are customers saying about our business. So I think slog, get your hands dirty, terrific advice. Lesson number 4, he says, initially, what you learn is more important than what you earn. And he says that he was lucky. He got a job where he had a boss who taught him a lot. He had a mentor who taught him a hell of a lot. And I think that's true for all of us. Very often, our early choices in life are influenced by how much money will I make? What will I get as a reward? Rather than trying to say, hey, what can I learn from what I'm doing out here? And that brings me really to the 5th one, which is, Karunan says, I used to first drive a tempo, then I drove a school bus, I drove a BST bus in Mumbai. I always dreamt of driving these big cars, these spectacular, nice cars. And he said, I learned a lesson. Don't worry too much about which car you're driving. Just focus on being a good driver. And he said, if you're a good driver, those good cars will eventually come. Okay? And I think that's something that, and as I heard Karunan tell me his story and these lessons, I said, wow, this is so interesting that someone sitting out there can actually tell us all so much about what does it take to be a great leader. But today we're talking about being professional speakers. So the question that arises, what does this mean, for all of us? Okay? I think it's interesting. First, we all get excited when somebody says, I will give you that memento and shawl to come and speak. And you say, wow, I've become a professional speaker. Not true. Okay? Getting that first invitation to speak does not make you a professional speaker. It actually tells you that you're now ready to go out and practice the craft, get better, and learn. Think of it that way. Lesson number 2, the real world is very, very different from your living room. Okay? Any of you who've tried singing in the bathroom? Yeah, we all think we can sing so well. Yeah? I think bathrooms have this amazing ability to make frogs sound like nightingales. Okay? And I think we've got to be careful that we don't get carried away and we recognize that going out and speaking will be a very different world from what you might have felt inside your own living room. Next, slog. Get your hands dirty. Okay? If you want to be a speaker, understand the nuts and bolts of speaking. Okay? Don't try and say, oh my goodness, I don't like technology. Don't try and say, social media, what's that? Facebook is for my children. Okay? Not true. I think you've got to learn what are all the other elements of speaking that can help you eventually to become a better speaker. Understand the technique, understand technology, understand podcasting, understand use of mics, understand what does it mean to carry that HDMI cable with you so that your laptop connects in a venue where it may not otherwise have worked. Understand what's happening behind. Lesson number 4, clearly it's important. What you learn is more important than what you earn. And 5th one, we all talk about saying, I want to go and speak over there. I want to become a TED speaker. I want to be invited to speak to this large audience of 2,000 people. Hang on. And don't say that when I get that opportunity, I'll show you what a great keynote I can deliver. Your chance to deliver that great keynote is right now. Okay? It's probably in that 8 people who are going to be attending that team meeting in your building to decide whether the metro is a good thing or not. Okay? It is. It's a good thing. I think it's important for us to grab every opportunity and say, hey, how can I make it count? All right? I think I learned something very interesting from someone I really admire, and no prizes for this one. This is Brian Tracy, okay? And someone I looked up to, someone who I followed, and as an early, 20, 30 years ago, I heard some of his tapes, and I was very impressed by what he was doing. And I must confess, he was an inspiration. And I got a chance to meet him. And this was a time when I was running a business and, wanted to turn into becoming a professional speaker. So I told him, I'm done. I'm going to move into becoming a professional speaker. And he gave me great advice. So good that I want you to also kind of listen to it. And he said, you want to be a professional speaker? Hold on. Speak 200 times for free. After that, if people still call you, and if you're still interested, if you still enjoy doing it, then take the plunge. Okay? And I must confess, I thought I was ready to do it on that day when I asked him this question, but then I actually took the time to do these 200 of those free gigs, probably more. So I would speak wherever anyone would invite me to try and say something. It could be a school, it could be a college, it could be the neighborhood Rotary Club, it could be the Toastmasters, it could be, like I said, this very important building society meeting, where they needed a speaker. And I still remember that there was this festival where there was a Women's Day being celebrated in the building, and they asked me to come and speak at the end of it. Man, I have never made so many friends in my life. Okay. Grab every opportunity, and you will find that helps you on your journey as you try and get better. Okay. So Karunan is someone who you might now remember for the rest of your life, I'm hoping, as someone who taught me a few lessons, and someone who might have taught you a few lessons too. So what does it take for us to then make our stories work? Okay? If you have your Karunan story, what are some of the things that you might want to consider as you try and share that with the rest of the world? I just thought I'll try and not necessarily prescribe that's the way to tell a story, but perhaps share some of the things that I've learned on what does it take to tell a story and make it stick. Here's the first one. Parachute into your story. Okay? One of the mistakes we make as storytellers is to try and say the story is happening there, let me now take the nice, long and winding road to get to that story. People aren't interested. Okay? So it's a good idea, if you know where the scene of action in your story is, try and parachute in. Get into the story as quickly as you can. Lesson number 2. Sorry, remember Goldilocks and the 3 bears? Yeah? So what happened? She first went to a bed, it was too hard. And the next one was too soft. And the third one was just right. And then she tried some soup, and the first one was too hot. The next one was too cold. And the third one was just right. And I think as speakers, it's important for us to get this Goldilocks idea into our stories. Don't have so much detail that people get bored. And don't have so little information that people have no clue what you're talking about. Get the Goldilocks bit right and say, hey, how do I get it just right? Not too much, not too little, not too hot, not too cold, not too hard, not too soft, just right. Lesson number 3. Okay. Some of us love our stories so much that we get lost in the story and we forget why we started it. Okay. So I think it's important for us to remember our aim at every time. What's our audience? What's our intent? What's our message? That's really the aim. Okay. Be sensitive to your audience. Respect your audience. You might have something very funny to say, but if there's one person in the audience who might not find it funny, trust me, it's not a good idea to share that. Okay? Remember your intent. Okay? Why am I telling you this story? Okay? Sometimes we are telling you a story because I thought it was very funny, I heard it yesterday. Yeah? Not good enough. There must be a good reason why you're sharing the story. Okay? More importantly, I think it's important to end your story. Some of us will tell you a long story, and by the time we come to the end, we'll say, actually, I forget the last line, but it was very funny. Yeah. Won't work. Okay? So make sure you get your aim right. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Okay? You will find that some of the most memorable stories are the ones which are very simple. They are easy to understand. They are not things that will tax you. They don't require you to make complex connections. And for God's sake, don't tell a story which makes people feel guilty that they're not good enough. Okay? Don't tell people a story where they say, oh, you didn't get it. Oh, yeah, sorry. You didn't go to business school, did you? Yeah? Won't work. Okay? So keep your stories simple. And I love to say this. Remember, you need to tell a story, not an epic. Okay? So keep it short. All right. So I think the last and the key message for me coming out of all of this is really here, which is to say, we sometimes think that our stories have to come from the other world, from people who've done very well, from those super successful guys, or from companies which are in the news for all the right reasons, perhaps. So we all think about, it's so cool to talk about the bean bags in the office over there, or it's so cool to talk about the fancy food that people get in some of these organizations, or, everyone has a favorite story about, how Bill Gates became Bill Gates, and of course, Steve Jobs, the legend continues to grow. And sometimes, as speakers, we will tend to think that our great stories will come from that world. Okay? Not true. Not true. Some of our finest stories will actually come from the world around us. Okay? And I'd like to believe that that neighborhood vegetable vendor didn't go to school. Okay? But hey, I think he can teach us all a few lessons in what does it take to succeed in this world? What does it take to become a better leader? You know, there might even be a tip for all of us as professional speakers. You probably know how this vegetable vendor will give away 2 rupees worth of coriander free, which allows him to charge 5 rupees more on the beans, right? Maybe a good idea to ask yourself as a speaker, what's my coriander? Okay. What can I give away? What can I do which will add value to my offering and allow me perhaps to make a lot more in the process? So I think there's a lesson you can learn from him. My favorite, have conversations with people around you. Okay? It could be that Uber driver who's got a story to tell. It could be that lift man, okay? That poor chap who's sitting in that table. But if you want to do a crash course in psychology, just talk to him. Okay? He'll tell you all about the kind of people who enter the lift and what do they do. How many people actually greet him? How many smile? How many of them are grumpy? How many of them actually say thank you at the end of it all? And I think if you want to understand what human beings are all about, perhaps that lift man will tell you more stories than you can count. Hang on, that's not the only bit. If you ask me, and if you're interested in these stories of perseverance, resilience, of fighting the odds and coming back in life, he's the best man. There is no one else who has as many ups and downs in his life as this man does. Yeah? And of course, that brings me to the other kind of person who can actually teach us a lesson or two, which is really people around us, ordinary people. And I think Karunan, for me, was not just a driver. He's a leadership guru. He's probably someone who can teach us all a few things on what does it take to become a better person. And I think we must recognize this, that everybody has a story. Everybody has something to share. There is no single magic sauce on what does it take to be a great guy, or to be a great leader, to be successful. Sometimes failure will have lessons for all of us too. The key bit, sometimes you can learn a lot by just being in the back seat. You don't even have to be in the driver's seat to learn what you need to know, as I did. I was sitting in the back seat and I learned a lot. And I'd like to suggest for all of us here, we can learn a lot. Okay? Just ask questions, just listen to people, look around you, and you'll find that there's a lot that you can learn. Okay? The truth is, stories are all around us, and that's really the simple message I want to leave you with. Stories are all around us. We only need to learn to look. Okay? All you need to do is to keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, keep your heart open, keep your mind open, and say, hey, this is so interesting. Okay? I know James spoke about AI and how that's going to change the world. I completely agree with him. If you are always inquisitive, that's an AI that will never go out of fashion, and it'll probably help you to tell your stories better. So guess what? Go out and try and say, hey, where do I find my story? Where's my Karunan? Where's my vegetable vendor? Where's that little story that I can go out and change the world with? Remember, the whole world is out there waiting to listen to your story. So, what's your story? Your time starts now. Thank you very much.